Thursday, April 18th, 2019, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. This morning I want to talk about the subject of wealth inequality, especially here in the UK. There's an interesting article actually in The Guardian about that, and then I'll take another article in The Independent from a couple of years ago or so that makes my case that actually the general public is kept at each other's throat, the divide and conquer, the divide and rule, while the very, very rich, the very, very wealthy, powerful actually play by other rules and keep control of everything. So like, politics, democracy is almost like keeping people in a plantation. So it's quite amazing, and hopefully it will help people realize that we need to get out of this paradigm of left and right, that we need small government, we need no taxation really at all, and you see why. Before that, of course, I'll look at the markets. I'm a little later today. It's about 8 a.m. London. So here we go. Yesterday was another negative day for the stock market, albeit it wasn't a huge down day. The Dow was down 3 points. S&P 500 actually was down 6 points, or 1/4%. Closed just at 2,900. Let's see, gold right now is down $2, $1271.70. Range has been $1271 to $1275. Silver, $14.95, so down about 4 cents. Range has been $15.03 to $14.93. What about the stock market? Well, this morning the Dow is down 75. We're just over 1/4% at 26,370. S&P 2892, down about 8 or 1/4% as well, and the Nasdaq 100 futures down 25 or 1/3%. The currencies are quite steady. Cable is unchanged, 130.45. Euro likewise 113.00, and the dollar is down about 0.1% against the yen, 111.91. Dollars rebounded a little bit against the yuan. It was a big down day yesterday for the dollar. We're now at 669.23, up 1/4. Crude oil drifting off a little bit. Yesterday we're above 64. Right now WTI is down 1/4 at 63.70. Brent crude is at 71.08, down 1/3. I noticed yesterday that copper had a big up day, high-grade copper future on COMEX. Copper spiked up quite a bit. It went almost to $3, breaking key levels, but then it came down late in the day. So keep an eye on copper. It could be interesting. Copper and silver are related. A lot of silver mining is done through copper mines. So just keep an eye on copper here. Technical picture looks pretty good. The 10-year yield has drifted off. We were at 260 yesterday. Right now we're at 258. So I saw this article yesterday in the Guardian, April 17th, 2019, by Rob Evans. Half of England is owned by less than 1% of the population. Research by author reveals corporations and aristocrats are the biggest landowners. I mean, this is not very surprising, but I'll read a little bit the article so you have an idea what it's talking about. It says half of England is owned by less than 1% of its population, according to new data shared with The Guardian that seeks to penetrate the secrecy that has traditionally surrounded land ownership. Yeah, there you go. No wonder they want to keep it secret, because it shows how the United Kingdom is still like a feudal society. It's like the old latifundium in the Roman times or in Latin America. But we're told this is a, democracy here in the UK, whatever democracy means, right? It says the findings described as astonishingly unequal, and I quote here, suggest that about 25,000 landowners, typically members of the aristocracy and corporations, have control of half the country. So these are the people who probably control institutions like the Bank of England that keep the general public enslaved. That's the only thing I can say. That gives us the paper money that we have, that gives us all the wars, the unnecessary wars that the general public fight under the premise of you know, a bogeyman out there, you know, of an enemy. Same people who instituted the income tax after the Napoleonic Wars, which was supposed to be temporary, right? And it goes to say the figures show that if the land were distributed evenly across the entire population, each person would have almost an acre, an area roughly the size of Parliament Square in central London. Am I calling for redistribution of the land here? No, this is like, this subject is very like, how can I say, it's a difficult subject, but I'll tell you what I think in a minute. I'll just keep going over the article here. It says major owners include the Duke of Buccleuch. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly. It's Bccleuch. The Queen. Well, apparently the Queen owns 1.4% of the UK. Several large grouse moor estates and the entrepreneur James Dyson. And it goes on to say, while land has long been concentrated in the hands of a small number of owners, precise information about property ownership has been notoriously hard to access. Well, you can wonder why they don't want people to access these, this data. But a combination of the development of digital maps and data, as well as pressure from campaigners, has made it possible to assemble the shocking statistics. So this is really interesting here. There's a little chart here. Half of England owned by 25 landowners, then less than 1% of the population. So there you go. 30% is the aristocrats, 18% corporations, 17 oligarchs, and the city bankers. And I would probably put all these together. And then you have also unaccounted 17%. And they say that it's probably aristocrats as well, because you don't have to register your property if you haven't sold it, bought or sold it in many, many years. So they don't have to do that. They've owned this for hundreds of years, sometimes 1,000 years, these people. Same family. So you can see there, it's mostly these people, the people who do the divide and conquer, who run the establishment. Even the public sector, well, owns 8.5%. And then the interesting number here is the 5%, which is actually 5.8%. That's us, the general public. That's what we own. And it made me think, here we are, left and right, you know, tax the rich, you know, redistribute wealth to the rich, from the rich to the poor. But, and usually that doesn't mean tax these people who own all this land. It means people who have done, it means people who own the 5%. So what I'm trying to say, we're like fighting each other and we've got almost nothing. And we keep each other from like maybe growing our wealth. You've got the inheritance tax in the UK. Almost everyone in London is liable to that tax because of property taxes. So if my wife and I were to die today, we'd leave our house to our daughter, and she wouldn't be able to keep it because she'd have to sell it to pay the huge tax on it. So that's what I'm trying to say. This left and right, this democracy is just like a sham to keep the spotlight away from the people who actually are in charge. And how do they get away with inheritance tax? Well, a lot of them, a lot of the title to their ownership is offshore. A lot of it is held through blind trusts. Can you imagine if inheritance tax was applicable to these people? They wouldn't be, they wouldn't have, this would change very quickly. I'm not, so what I'm trying to say here is that we need to get away from the left-right paradigm. We need to demand small government, sound money, no taxation, because I think in a few generations, this 5% would grow a lot more, and it would chip into the power of these 25,000 people. I mean, the general public is more than 15 million. It's a little bit like in Bug's Life, you know, the ants and the grasshoppers. So the grasshoppers are in charge in the UK. What about in the US? Well, in the US it's not too different, but you can understand why people moved out of the UK, emigrated, went to the United States or the colonies, because they had more opportunity there to have land. Here in this country, unless you're an aristocrat or the queen, you can't really build anything. So there's an article here from Mother Jones. I've never heard of this website, but it's an old article, but it's still applicable because wealth inequality is getting worse everywhere, US included. I think this is from 2010. I'm not sure. Yeah, 2011. It says, how rich are the super rich? So it just shows you here, winners take all. The super rich have grabbed the bulk, of the past 3 decades gains. So you see they're the top 1%, average household income, how they're doing. You see also wealth distribution, the top 20% in the US own almost 90% of all the wealth. And it wasn't, going back probably, there's always been the very rich, but I think in the US, the other thing that has not helped is the politics, divide and conquer, left and right, Republican, Democrat. The Federal Reserve, of course, is a big culprit, in my opinion. It led to the creation of the IRS, income tax. So, and I think that's what the founding fathers are trying to guard against divide and conquer. It was George Washington who said, do not try to avoid political divisions and political parties. Thomas Jefferson warned about central banking. So there you go. Amazing data from the UK, but not surprising. Another thing I'd like to point out, which is, and I'm not a socialist at all. I'm for meritocracy, and what we have in the UK isn't. And these same people, which is amazing, these same people who own most of the UK, they get farm subsidies from the European Union. So it goes here. This is another article that, and I'm not making this up, from The Independent, June 2017, EU farming subsidies. 1 in 5 biggest recipients are billionaires and millionaires on the UK rich list. And I think that Duke that I talked about earlier, he's here as well. Where is it? Let's have a look. Oh yeah, new entrants on the environmental charities top 100 subsidy recipients this year included the Earl of Rosebery and the Duke of Buccleuch and Earl Bathurst. Even the Queen gets EU subsidy. They include the Duke of Northumberland, the Duke of Westminster, the Earl of Ivy, and the Guinness family, and the Queen. So there you go. Is it any wonder that they don't want the UK to leave the EU? So these same people who own most of the UK are getting subsidies through the EU from EU taxpayers, not just UK taxpayers, but mugs out in the European Union, in the continent of Europe. Is this socialism for the rich? No, I think this is just feudalism. I don't profess to know the solution to this, but one way to get away from this, to make a step in the right direction, is not to buy into their political game of democracy, because we don't have democracy. We live in a plantation, and we're basically slaves. We've got, you know, we don't use real money. We're taxed, you know, on everything. They want to tax us on air now, the climate change scam, everything. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. If you enjoy my videos but haven't subscribed to the channel, think about subscribing. Make sure you also hit the little notification bell above to be notified of my new videos. You can follow me on Twitter, Steemit, and DTube as well. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.